A press conference today to introduce the 2025 Pollinator Protection Package. Representative Snodgrass hosting the event aimed at protecting and encouraging the health of Wisconsin's pollinators and their habitats.
We know how much of our global food supply and Wisconsin's growers and farmers depend on pollinators, but we now know that with the rusty patch bumblebee being part of the endangered species list and some food insecurity, how much more important it is to make sure we are protecting both habitat and other things that impact pollinator health.
The Pollinator Protection Package is 7 pieces of legislation aimed at protecting and encouraging the health of pollinators, from bumblebees to butterflies, bats, birds, and beetles.